So welcome back to Speaker's Corner here at IDS 2015. Coming up next, our presentation on Digital Implantology. And just let me mention once again, you will find the schedule of the program of today over there, and you might want to pick up one of the flyers over there to get an overview of the presentations we're going to have on the next days here at IDS 2015. So, Digital Implantology is our topic, and welcome on stage. It's your audience.
Hi, I'm Manoj Vijay. I'm here to talk to you about digital implantology. In the 15 years that I've been involved in the dental industry, I can honestly say that implantology is possibly the most exciting aspect of it. It encapsulates everything that you want, from total oral reconstruction to changing a human being's life. To give you an idea of where I'm actually involved in it, I work for a company called Evodental. We basically do full oral reconstructions, which is total mouth rehabs that involves essentially edentulous or terminal dentition patients, placing implants and fixing implant retained bridge work, total solutions. We don't do partial frameworks, we only do full arch work. A bit about Evodental. We were established in 2007 in Highton in Merseyside. Like I said, we're a total jaw rehabilitation centre. Purely implant-based treatment solutions, that's essentially what we do. The reason why we moved along into total implant solutions is because we found that through the spectrum of dentistry, there was only one modality where you could actually provide a solution for a patient, which was completely based in science. There was no guesswork to it. Root canal treatments, this, that, and the other, all that stuff, you're leaving a lot to biology and you're leaving a lot to a patient. Unfortunately, we always found that our solutions never quite encapsulated what we wanted to provide to a patient. So we've placed approximately 40,000 implants in the last 8 years. Approximately 10,000 full arch bridges we've done from a whole spectrum, including your acrylic frameworks, geoceramic frameworks, substructures and superstructures. In order to do this, obviously we have an on-site prosthetic lab, and we're now opening a new centre in Heathrow in May of 2015. Our primary focuses are placement of implants, specifically for immediate loading of implants, placements of implants in the morning, bridge work fitted in the evening. Early loading for patients who haven't got amazing bone. Obviously you might leave them for a little while for them to heal slightly, and then give them an actual substructure, reinforced frame, and the superstructure over the top within 48 to 72 hours. Or delayed loading for those ones who've had terminal dentition and very little bone or very weak bone, give it time for osseointegration to actually place before actually putting a superstructure over the top. And of course, final prosthetic solutions across the spectrum of materials which are available today. In order to do that, what you need to have is essentially a workflow that will allow you to manage any material. So what we worked out in all our years of experience is every clinical solution requires a mix of these three elements. So if you have a look, you've got your biology of the patient. You've got the patient's aspirations, which is always aesthetics. Nobody ever wants to come and see a dentist and leave without looking fantastic. They want, instead of even saying looking fantastic, they want to look like themselves. They want to be able to look in the mirror and feel like they did 20 years ago before they went down the route of having a partial denture fitted, eventually having their bite changed, eventually having their smile changed, eventually having their centerline changed. They want to feel like themselves. So that's a patient aspiration. The reality is the mechanics though, because if it doesn't function, you can't help it in the first place. So as a total oral rehabilitation centre, we try and focus everything so that we get the ideal match, which is right in the middle, which is a complete mix of biology, aesthetics, and mechanics. It's always the aspiration. There are times when you have to compromise. It depends on the clinical solution. There are times when it isn't possible to do that for a patient. There are times when you have to compromise something. So if the patient's got poor biology, you have to make it a lot more mechanically loaded, which unfortunately means that you can't get the aesthetics exactly perfect for them. These are all compromises, but you're brutally honest with your patients as well. So for the people that are here, I don't know how many of you are actually clinicians, I don't know how many of you are actually working for labs. The reason why I'm explaining this is we actually do all modalities. We see the patient through the clinic and have our own lab. We don't do work for other people, our work is solely done for our patients. So we get to see the whole life cycle of how a patient actually gets treated. And I can always say the utmost important person in that whole chain It's not the dentist, it's not the technician, it's always the patient, always. So we always aspire to try and give them, in that Venn diagram, the best mix for that solution. So bear that image in mind as I'm going through, please. So how we do it? We take a full assessment of the patient's current situation and aspiration of outcomes. Like I mentioned before, there are a lot of patients out there who come in and the first thing they'll say is, I just want to be able to go to a restaurant and eat a steak. I just want to go and smile at my son's birthday party and have a picture taken. These are things that possibly people like you and me take for granted, because I don't think twice about eating and smiling, but people do, and it does affect them. And that's why we take that very seriously. We apply our principles of proper oral biofunction. I don't want to stand here and tell you that we're the nicest people, because that's not what we're here to do. We're here to make sure that you can eat 3 times a day, and if we can, make sure that you can function well while doing it. But oral biofunction is the most important thing, especially when it comes to implantology. Because if the implants don't function properly, if the implants fail, it's game over anyway. We incorporate the aesthetic needs of the patient into our understanding. Because at the end of the day, you are dealing with human beings. They want something in return. They'll care about their implants today. They'll be worried about their surgery. They'll want to know whether it hurts. They'll want to know how long they're going to be sore for. But in 5 years' time, when the implants are fused into their bone and they have no idea that it's there anymore, they are going to care about their prosthetics. It's always the priority for them. We then work in clinical teams to develop a solution. Working in clinical teams meaning that whenever we target a case, we have a mix of clinicians and technicians that work together, because both of them bring different modalities into a solution. Clinicians might have the face-to-face dealings with patients standardly. In our place it doesn't work like that, technicians do as well. But there has to be a way of transferring the information directly from the patient to these people so that they can come up with the ideal solution. So you might find that the clinician will talk about the biology and say, well, I can only place pseudomaxillary implants or implants in the anterior region. And you'll have a technician who goes, yes, but if you do that, we won't be able to load up to 14 teeth because the angulation will be too much, X, Y, Z, whatever else it is. And then at the end of it, deciding what the patient's smile should look like as well. We then introduced the development into the digital workflow. Now, this is specifically what I'm talking about here with digital implantology. Putting it into the digital workflow is possibly one of the most important criteria that we have to look at, because there's only so much you can do by hand. We're living in an age of technology now. It is important that we move along with it. It's not for the fact of making our lives easier, it's for the fact of making patient solutions much better, always. Use the right equipment and materials to deliver the correct outcome. I know that last sentence, it sounds like a throwaway sentence, but it's amazing how many people, and I speak from personal experience, how many people don't consider looking at the right equipment, looking at the right materials. They'll consider things, don't get me wrong, cost is always very important, time is always very important, whatever else, but the most important thing is focusing on the patient solution. As long as you understand what you actually want to get out of the patient solution, you can always find the proper things that you need, and you can always incorporate them into your workflow. So in order to do this, what we need, forward-thinking partners with passion for what they do. That is very important. Innovation on how they do it. People who can sit there, look at something that they've made and go, yeah, I think we can do something else with this. And then do it, and then come back 6 months later and go, I think we can improve on that. And then do it, and then come back 6 months later and go, you know what, there's an even better way. And just keep going. That's how it works. Implants have been around now since 1967, I think the first implant was placed. We're now nearly 50 years into it. Yeah, there's still new technologies that are coming out. You just can't stand still in this industry, it's not possible. If you do stand still, unfortunately, you're failing your patient. Support for their products, always very important. Always very important to know that you've got a team of people that are there that will actually understand, irrespective of whether they actually follow your wants and needs, they actually understand your wants and needs, and they provide you with support for that. And finally, ambition to be the best on that side. Ambition to be the best is important. I don't believe in arrogance, it's not what it's about. When a patient comes to see us, I want to go out of my way to make sure that I take care of that person. I want to be the best at that. There's no two ways about it. It's very important. You need to be around a team of people that aspire to the same thing. We also need, from a business standpoint, partners who understand efficiency, accuracy, and speed. They're paramount in a workflow. Quality, when it comes to implantology, is king. And value for money and return on investment are important factors. They are very important factors. The beauty of dentistry, I'm sure most people in here will agree with me, is there's plenty of money to go around. So return on investment is one of those things where if you sit down and you calculate it, everybody's got teeth, everybody needs solutions. You'll make your return on investment, so you focus on getting the right equipment in the first place. And in that, we found the perfect solution in Medit. Now, when I'm speaking about the digital workflow, specifically with implantology, what I'm going to concentrate on right now is essentially the scanning part. So you've got your scanning, your designing, your milling, or printing, sintering, etc. The part of the digital workflow that I want to work on right now is essentially the scanning. Data capture is possibly the most important part as far as we're concerned. If you get the data capture wrong, everything else that you do is going to be wrong anyway. So this is what we'll be talking about today. So a little bit about Medit. It was founded as the Solutionix Corporation back in April of 2000 in South Korea. They launched the Identica scanner back in October of 2009. They launched the Identica Blue in March 2013. That's the scanner that we got. We got those scanners. They changed the Medit Corporation in June of 2013. And one of the global leaders in the 3D scanner industry. Now, they've been doing scanners for other industries for quite a while. They entered the dental market about 5 years ago. And have been doing amazingly well because they're still growing, and this is only the beginning. So what I'm going to go through now is essentially a case study for you of a sample case that we did a couple of months ago, which is essentially a full upper arch reconstruction. We placed 6 implants and engaged 5 for loading. We immediately loaded those 5. We left a 6th one as a sleeper just in case. We thought the bone quality wasn't fantastic with the adjacent implant, so we thought in the future, if that implant does fail, at least we've got one adjacent to it that we can use again. Forward engineering, always a good idea. But the patient requirement at the end of it was to have a full implant retained zirconia bridge. Why zirconia? She wanted that natural aesthetic look. She wanted really white teeth, something that she hadn't had for 40 odd years. So we said we'd give it to her. So standard method, any of you who are clinicians in here, I apologize if you feel like I'm patronizing you for telling you things you already know. But plaster impressions taken chair-side with implants in situ. Cast to create a patient model showing the implant location and soft tissue. Now, a lot of people would say that at that point, you could start taking your digital impressions. I will go on to that very shortly. But for us specifically, because it was essentially the second set of bridge width that we were making for the patient, we did want to actually take another set of models, so we actually had a physical recording of where they actually were. Obviously, as you can appreciate, as you had the implants placed 6 months ago, there was tissue resorption. So essentially what we wanted to do, we wanted identical, we wanted exact physical models. We then waxed them and articulated the patient's dentition to the specification of the clinician, tooth size, shape, color, inclusion, etc. I don't want to throw away all those sort of things because that is possibly the most important stuff from the patient's point of view, which we obviously take into consideration, of course. Like I said, the scanner that we use is the Medit Identica Blue. There's a nice little picture of it for you. That is actually our scanner in our scanning room. This is the main screen of the actual Identica workflow. So as you can see, it's actually very straightforward, upper and lower jaw. It tells you which tooth type, it tells you the basic options and additional options. Now, the scanner itself comes with many different additions and applications. You can get your multi-die scanner, you can get your articulator with it. Because of the way that we actually create our bridge work, because of our prosthetic lab, we always wax up our bridge work first. Because what we like to do is we like to put it onto our hinge articulators, we like to articulate it first, make sure the occlusion is absolutely perfect before we go down the workflow point of view. Obviously, because we're also going to be changing it from a wax up to cylinders, we like to have that wax up done first. But as you can see, you have every option to do everything else in this as well. And if you have a look at the screen down here, you have your basic option, your multi-die option, your impression option, and your denture option. Essentially, with your workflow, it's whichever one you want to work with, and then just go next. So this is your basic screen. That's with the data filled in for the patient. You'll notice that the only thing that I've actually put on there for a preparation tooth is I've just highlighted tooth 11 and just put wax on. That's it. And the reason being, there's no reason, if you've waxed up a whole arch, there's no reason for you to identify each individual tooth because it's going to take the data for you. You just have to identify what data you want. So if I say it's tooth 11, but then I explode tooth 11 to this size, that's tooth 11 as far as that data is concerned. The important bit about it is how well it captures the data. So all I've done there is I've highlighted preparation tooth, wax up, pin next model. Then essentially clicking next to go to the next part of the workflow. So that's the arch that we've actually created. So to give you a bit of an idea, as you can see from that diagram, we had to place implants at a few ridiculous angles on that patient. Unfortunately, she was devoid of a lot of bone. So you can see that the arch that we actually made is pretty bulky. It's a pretty big arch. You'll also notice that there isn't amazing definition just yet on that. But there doesn't need to be, because all we were looking for, like I was saying, on that specifically, is making sure that we capture the data of where the implants are in relation to where the wax-up is. To design it, you can go into design software to do that. You don't have to do it prior to doing it, like I've said before. Using your hand to design is all well and good. Using a mouse and a screen that big where you can blow up a tooth to that size, better. But the important thing, once again, is to get the right data. So this screen is showing you essentially about the area that you want to capture. So like I said, tooth 11 is one thing, but I've just highlighted the center of that and just exploded it to say that that whole thing is tooth 11. Just made it nice and simple. All I'm doing is capturing this bit of data. Once you've done that, you go through the workflow again, and then it asks you to assess the height. So you don't have to take the whole thing at all. Essentially, you just want to get it from the base of where the model is to the top of where the tooth is. So you know that you've got from 50% to 100%, you're essentially within the boundary, so it's not an issue at all. Then it tells you, please remove all tooth models and insert the following wax up. Now, if you're clever, you'd already have it on anyway, because it's the best way to make sure that you are capturing the right data. Otherwise, you're going to have to take it off, put it back on, articulate it again, and whatnot. So that was already set the way that it was. So we didn't have to do anything for this stage, so you just go next. So this is the data that's captured. As you can see, it's got dual cameras, so it's capturing the image at two different angles. The red that you see is actually light. It's actually showing you where there's the most light. So when you're capturing the data, you can actually see where you could possibly need to have, you might have to move it around a bit to capture it in a different way, but as you can see from that, it captured it anyway. You can always adjust it. It's a manual brightness icon as well, so you can always adjust the manual brightness, which will dull the light as well. So you can see that we're just now going through the workflow. So that's essentially the front part of the arch. You can see that it tells you as well. You can synchronize the view, so as you're moving your mouse, you're moving the scanner as well, which gives you a real-time view of how you're actually moving the model. You can add your scan, go back to previous data, go to your next data, delete data, and you have your erase options as well, and you undo and redo. Because we've done this thousands of times, obviously, for us it's quite simple. Move it, add scan, move it, add scan, move it, add scan. So that's what we've got so far. And a bird's eye view of it as well, essentially showing where the implants are. If you actually have a look just there, that's where the implant sleeper was, right up there. We didn't actually engage that one, we didn't actually use it. The patient occlusion was actually that far out that we didn't actually want to make the bridge any thicker on this side, which is why you're noticing that shape over there. But I just thought I'd show you that. It's not a scan error, that's just because we blocked it off. So now you've got your wax up. How does it actually work out, the wax up? Quite simply, as with any algorithm, if you have A plus B, but you minus A, you're just left with B. And that's essentially what it does there. Because we've got a model and we've got the bridge over the top, the minute you remove the bridge and you scan the model, you're left with the bridge. Very, very simple. So please remove all tooth models and insert the next models. Like I said, I just highlighted tooth 11, so that whole thing, as far as we're concerned, is tooth 11. So that's the model without the bridge over the top of it. And that's the next scan. All I'm doing on this, by the way, once again, is just using the right arrow going through the workflow. You might have to scan it depending on the angulation of the implants, depending on the depth of it, depending on how much tissue is sat on there, and I'll go through the tissue very shortly. But depending on that, you might have to move it around a bit and get a few scans. But that's the whole point of having a good scanner, is that you can do that. That's the important bit. The data capture is the most important part. So now that we've got that, we've got next, and now it's also aligning the data. So it's essentially adding the previous scan that we just took over the top, and then it is now trying to work out exactly where the location is. Now a little trick that we have is that we never move. Once we've actually engaged the model onto the actual holder, we never remove it. There's no point. Even if you move it by ½ a millimeter, why are you moving it in the first place? So you screw it down tight, you leave it on there. You take whatever you want on and off it, but you always leave it on the hole. So that's essentially what we've done here. It gives you an option anyway at the end of it to align your bridge. So it always gives you 1 point, 3 point, or you can snap it to it. Now 1 point and 3 point essentially means that you can actually highlight salient points on those models, and then you can actually match them up together, and then the computer will automatically match it up. But because we haven't moved it, and like I said, with our experience with it, we've used it that many times, we knew that nothing had happened, we just click on the simple snap to, which is a very simple algorithm where it just works out an approximation which it didn't have to because it was in the right place in the first place. Then it tidies it up for you. And now you have a nice lovely scan of your waxed up bridge. Now that you have the scan of the waxed up bridge, you want to start taking the scans of the actual implant itself. Straight back into the digital workflow. Load up the screen. Once again, tooth 11. No wax up on this one. No wax up. It's just a index model.
Yama is looking for his mother Aiko.
Once again, highlighted tooth 11.
The next info scout.
So only Pindex model. That's all we want. Now all we want is perfect scanning model. Once again, you're going through the workflow, highlighted as tooth 11 on that. As you can see, the cylinders have been attached. You can see where the implant's been blanked out on that side. Because I've just gone through the workflow already, and because it was something that I'd already just done, the minute I clicked it at approximately the same area that it was at before, it just highlights the same surface area as well. So it's nothing you have to change once again. Same height once again, this time just without the bridge. Now, just very quickly to just let you know about the tissue, because this was an impression that was taken in 6 months' time, what we basically did was we made sure that we glued the tissue down. There's no reason to remove the tissue for us as far as we're concerned, because everything that we're going to do is either going to press against the tissue for an upper jaw, or if it's a lower jaw reconstruction, we always leave a 2 millimeter gap anyway for slider jets and easy cleaning. In the upper jaw, that's an absolute, you don't need it. And plus, if you have a gap in your upper jaw when you're making a bridge, you're not going to enunciate your words properly, which is going to be a big problem for the patient. The patient will just have to come back. So that's why I'm not taking a tissue scan on this. But you can obviously, I'm sure you saw it on there, there's a gingiva scan option on there. So if you specifically wanted to have if you had a case where you specifically need to remove the gingiva, it's easy enough to do. It works in exactly the same workflow as well. So there's our first scan, which kind of gives you an idea of exactly what it's looking like already. And like I said, you're moving around to different angles to obviously get as much information as possible. Getting it into the middle of that cylinder is not exactly the most important thing, because you're going to be drilling a hole through it if you're going through the CAM machining process anyway. But everything else about it is of paramount importance. So as you can see, the scan data is fantastic. So it now data processes all in. And you're left with your final scan. So now essentially what you've got is you've got a scan of your model with cylinders, and you've got a scan of a bridge. So anybody who uses the digital workflow anyway, if you don't put this into your CAD software, you can start designing it. You already know where your tissue is, you already know how to make a preparation margin, you know exactly what the occlusion is, you never touch that. Well, we never touch that because we already know exactly where it's going to be. And now you can start designing your teeth, shape, size, putting the marmalades on, all those sort of things. You can do all that stuff after this. So as I was saying, the next steps, the scanned STL files are taken into CAD software for design. I'm not going to specifically go on about that today because that was not my intention. But the CAD software itself, for STL files, for scan data, they're built to take those things. So it's quite simple to do. We manipulate and adjust the designs for the patient to the clinician specifications. And we finish the design process in order to manufacture the profile prosthetics. It all starts with the data capture. The accuracy of the scan determines the quality of the end result. I know this might sound a bit patronizing to a lot of people, but this is how serious it actually is. This is basics. It's the most important as far as we're concerned. The speed of the scan determines the speed of the digital workflow. The speed of the digital workflow determines the efficiency of your lab, and the most important aspect, the speed and accuracy of the digital workflow determines the efficiency and quality of delivery to the patient. That is very important. That is of paramount importance to us. Like I said, because we deal with patients from the front and we also get work done from our own lab, we see the whole life cycle. Those things are paramount. And in order to do that, like I said, data capture, it's everything. So very quickly, just to introduce the next chapter, I've been speaking about the Medit Identica Blue, like I said, it's the scanner that I have. They are now releasing the Medit Identica Blue 2015. It's a nice piece of kit as well. I like having good work done. I don't mind having a nice piece of kit sitting in my lab as well. It looks good. So I particularly enjoy that. As you can see, it comes with a nice Artex articulator module as well. The Identica Blue 2015, faster measurement scans for a full arch in just 35 seconds using the specified board. 35 seconds it's ridiculously fast. It's just so fast, it's unbelievable. Higher accuracy, even though those scans are fantastic, this one's even better. Less than 10 micron accuracy. New patented IMV, Intelligent Multi-View Scanning, which allows the acquisition of superior quality scan data, which makes your scanning more cost effective. I learned about this yesterday. You have two cameras pointing at a bridge. And if you have 2 bits of data coming straight at it, you have 2 bits of light pointing at it. What it actually does is it works out which one is better and then uses that to give you better depth, which is fantastic. The computer does that. You don't even have to think about it. Expanded space for large models and articulators by increasing the operating space by 21 millimeters. That's great. When I was talking before about articulating them before we go into our digital workflow, we use Artex articulators. So now what we can actually do is just put it straight on, have your opposing model in there, and scan it straight away. Improved blue light for more precision and greater detail. The new Identica Blue scanner employs the most advanced blue light technology for even more faster and more accurate scanning. All I'm hearing is it's going to make my solutions to patients better. And finally, the Identica Blue is an International Design Excellence Award Gold winner. Like I said, innovation and passion is important, and they evidently have a lot of it. And that is why we use them. And if you want to come and see them, they're in Hall 3-1, which is this hall, I believe, at stand 42. Thank you very much. Any questions? No?
Thank you very much. Thanks for being with us. Now, we got some time left, so if there are any questions, just shoot. Not yet.
No.
Well, anyway, you're at Hall 3-1, which is this hall, actually. So
Right down there.
Right down there. So if there are any questions coming up later, I think there's a good chance of meeting you over there. Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us.
No problem.
That is